Thank you all for coming to this completely pre-planned event. And I'm here to tell you the story of Cliodhna's wave as I know it. A long time ago in Ireland, in the time of the Fianna, when the veils between this world and the next world were a bit thinner, there was a woman who came from Tirtangara, and she came to Ireland with her mortal lover, and she came to this cove, and that was Cliodhna, and this is her story. Tirtangara is the land of promise. It's the land of Manannán mac Lir, the god of the sea. And Tirtangara is beautiful, and the wind sounds like music, and the rain is warm, and no one goes hungry, and no one is ever ill, and everything is ideal. And this is where Cliodhna lived. And she was the daughter of Manannán mac Lir's druid, and she knew her own magics, and she had 3 little birds that followed her around everywhere they went, and they would sing and they would bring joy into people's hearts, and their song was so sweet that it could heal sickness, and it was part of the reason why no one in Tirtangara ever got sick. Cliodhna was a part of that country as much as anything, as much as the soil and the trees and the sky above it. But she never fully settled with a husband or even a lover. You see, Cliodhna was beautiful, unbelievably so, but there was a coldness to her that no one could quite break through. There was a distance. She knew that people loved her, but she never felt that connection, that spark, that longing. And so she would go for walks by herself, and she would always be drawn down to the sea. Something about the waves on the island, she just had to be close to it. And one day, as she was walking down by the sea, she came across a little copper curragh. And she didn't recognize it, but she knew it must be Manannán's, because who else would it belong to? And she thought, I know what I'll do. I'll send this curragh away, and it will bring me something. I just feel it, I know it. This curragh is going to bring me the warmth that I'm looking for. And she sang to the curragh, and the music lifted it up, pushed it onto the waves, and sent it away. Meanwhile, back in Ireland, the Fianna were drinking and carousing and having fun and having a little bit of a problem. You see, one of the Fianna, Ciabhan of the curling locks, Ciabhan of the luscious hair, Ciabhan of the amazing face, well, everybody loved him. And everybody loved him. All of the Ban Fianna loved him. The Fianna loved him too. They were great friends with him, but all of their wives also quite liked him. And in fact, everywhere where Ciabhan went, heads would turn. And it was just becoming a little bit of an issue. So they said, you know what, Ciabhan, maybe it would be a good idea for you to go hunting. You know, go and get us some food. Maybe go for a month or 2 or 3 and just give us a break because you're just too pretty. So Ciabhan was a very good-natured lad. He went off, and as he was wandering out along the shores, he spotted this little copper curragh come skipping over the waves, and it landed right in front of him. And anyone else in Ireland at the time might have gone, that is a fairy curragh, and I am going to walk around it and get on with my life. But not the Fianna. No Fianna ever backed down from something that looked interesting. So he hopped in the curragh, and as soon as he was in it, it went off, and it scooted across the waves, and it got back to the shore, and he stepped out, and he looked up, and 2 people who had never really felt a spark before thought lightning had struck them. Ciabhan and Cliodhna stared at each other, dumbfounded. Eventually, words came back, and an introduction was made. But that was it. They were joined at the hip. And Ciabhan was welcomed into Tirtangara, like any guest would be. He was given a place at the table. Some people were a little bit sad that Cliodhna couldn't look at anybody else, but you know what? They were happy as well, because they'd never seen her smile like this. Every time she smiled, it was like the sun was rising again. And the whole island sang with her joy. But Ciabhan grew quiet after a while, and he said, I think I may have to go back to Ireland. And Cliodhna said, why? And he went, well, I love it here, and I love you, and I think you should come with me. But I have to get back to the Fianna. I've promised to live by them and work with them and fight with them. They're my brothers. I can't just leave my family. But you could come with me. Ireland is amazing. Ireland is beautiful. The rain is a bit colder and the wind is a little bit harsher in the winter, but there's a beauty in that coldness sometimes. And Cliodhna said, well, wherever you go, I go. I can't let you go away on your own. So they went down and they got in the County Cork and they sailed back to Ireland, and they didn't tell anyone. They just went. And they arrived down the coast onto that beach. And Cliodhna was in love. She looked around, she looked at the cliffs, she looked at the water, she looked at the plants and the birds, and everything was so full of life, because all of the other worlds, all of the islands, all of the lands of everlasting promise and beauty and joy and youth, they lack that vitality that comes with knowing that there's an end. And she could feel it thrumming in the ground around her. And she thought, yes, this was a good choice. I can feel life bubbling everywhere I go. And she said she would stay. And Ciabhan was delighted, because he was hoping she would like his place. And he went off to go and get them some food and get them some firewood. And she stayed on the beach and she made them a little shelter to spend the night. And then night fell. And Ciabhan hadn't returned yet. And it got a little bit colder and there was no firewood. And it got dark. It got quiet. Cliodhna could hear the waves rolling in. And they grew stronger and they crashed against the rocks. And she decided to walk out along the strand a little bit, along the edges, just to see if she could see Ciabhan. He should be back fairly soon. And as she was walking, she heard the tiniest strain of music coming over the waves towards her. And she sat down to listen to it, because that was the music of her home. And she thought, well, it can't be that far away, really, if I could hear it here. I'll just listen a moment. And she sat down. And before she knew it, she'd fallen asleep. And she lay there on the strand, dreaming sweet dreams as the waves rolled in. And the waves got bigger. And the waves got angrier and more violent as they crashed up, and the waves got closer to her. And on the 9th wave, it came roaring down the bay, crashed over the top of her. And when the foam retreated, Cliodhna was gone. Now, some say that she drowned. And some say that Manannán just took her back, that she was never meant to leave Tirtangra, that without her there was no song and there was sickness in the land, and that he couldn't bear to be parted from her. And some say that she went into the island itself and into the sea, and that you can still hear her on the waves. Every 9th wave of a storm, you'll hear the crash and you'll hear the last cry of Cliodhna as she calls out for Ciabhan. But Ciabhan never found her again. When he came back, the beach was empty. And though he spent the rest of his life looking for her and the rest of his life listening, he was on his own from then on. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Lovely. I hadn't heard it either, but it's beautiful, beautifully told as well.